So in previous videos, you've heard me talk about a 2-5-1 or a 2-5-1 chord progression. And some of you may be like, what in the world are you talking about? Why are you talking about numbers and keys or letters? I'm Chris Moses with Gospel Progressions University, and I'm going to tell you exactly what a 2-5-1 is. So I'm going to show you how numbers can relate to notes. Very simple. You just have to know two things. Know what the major scale is and how to count. And I know most of you got the second part. So the major scale is a 7-tone scale, right? So say in the key of C, I'll keep it simple because some of you get upset when I don't use C. So C is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, right? And of course back to C. It's a 7-tone scale. So simply put, you correspond each number with the letter. The first one being the C in C major. That's 1. D is 2. E is 3. All right. Your 4 is going to be F. 5 is G. 6 is A. And 7 is B. All right. And we don't have 8, but it's a 7-tone scale. So we go up to 7. So now when we're looking at how these relate to one another, all we're concerned about is the degrees or the intervals. Intervals with music, the simplest explanation is it's the distance between two notes. So between C and D, the interval is 2. Between C and G, the interval is 5, or 5, however you want to say it. So these notes now can become numbers. So when we have notes now, we're talking about our first degree, second degree, third degree, and so on. The 3 we're going to look at today, like I said, are the 2, the 5, and the 1. And it's going to be in that order. So we have notes. So now when we look at notes, we can look at chords because chords are made up of notes, right? So the first chord in any major scale is going to be your 1, your major scale or your major chord. So if you ever hear anybody talking about going back to the 1 or the root or the tonic, this is exactly what they mean in the corresponding key. So if you're in the key of C major, your root or tonic or 1 will be C major. If it's the key of E, your root or tonic or 1 would be an E chord, an E major chord. Specifically, people are talking about major chord tonality or major key tonality. They would say the 1 would be major, and typically that's what people mean. For this purpose here, we'll say that the 1 is C. Okay, so that's your 1. So this is your first chord, is going to be a major chord. Your second chord, the 2, the second interval is going to be a minor chord. The fifth interval is going to be G, a major chord. So with the 2-5-1 chord progression, we're progressing to get back to the 1. 2, 5, 1. This chord progression is basically all you need to learn to play gospel music, to play jazz, to play most westernized music. This chord progression pulls very strong to one to another. The first chord, meaning the first chord is the second chord, right? And that chord there pulls strongly to a 5 chord. But the 5 chord is what's called a dominant chord, not a dominant 7th or 7. Don't confuse that with a dominant 7. It's a dominant chord. Okay, let's just say that. And when you think of something dominant, it dominates the tonality. 5 wants to be resolved to 1 every single time. So I stand firm on that. Anytime you listen to music, when you listen to gospel music, there's some type of 2-5-1 or 5-1 chord progression, whether it's being played in a melody or whether it's being implied or played actually in the chords itself or just straight out played. You're going to hear this every single time. And there's so many renditions and so many alterations you can do with this, more than just the very simple diatonic. And when I say diatonic, I'm not, there's no sharps and flats. So diatonic C is just from C to C. That's just a fancy word just for being in the major key. Okay, now, so how does this relate to actually playing music? How does this relate to something that you use every day? So now we're going to go from a 2-5-1 chord progression to what's called leading tones. So the leading tones is what your ear is hearing and you're thinking, okay, well, I'm going to hear this and I want it to go somewhere. And I'm picking that particular F for a reason. So for example, in that 2-5-1 chord progression, right? Let's take the key of course, of C again. And we have the 2 here. 2 here, right, is going to be the 2. I'm playing the root, all right, or the tonic, okay? Now, the F for the note for in D, D, F, A, and D minor is the minor third. And don't worry too much about what that is, but just take my word for it for now. So it's the minor third from D, okay? We have that tonality here. So now we move from 2, all right? And then now we go to the 5. And then we're gonna go right back now. Of course, it's gonna resolve down to 1. So what you're hearing on top is this here is a leading tone. It pushes, it compels the melody to go in a particular direction. And it's very easy for you to hear it if you play it in that particular way. I can play it, 2, 5, I'm sorry, 2, that was 4, 5, 1. Still the same pulling, but the leading tones, you can feel it, you can hear it. All right? It has a different pull to it. The same thing, but it's more compelling. So that's what we use when we're playing gospel music or jazz. We're using leading tones to pull, to push the person to a particular key. Really, the secret. The secret. I almost want to whisper the secret. What it is we're getting ready for the new key that we're about to play in. And I'll explain exactly what that means in a minute. Now, when we're talking about a 2-5-1 chord progression, the most compelling chord is the 5 chord. That's the one that builds the most tension. The 2 starts the tension. It tells the ear what to listen for, especially when you hear this over and over. And we're all familiar with Western music, assuming that you listen to a lot of Western music, jazz, gospel, whatever. So the 2 chord is going to be the chord that starts the tension. The 5 chord is going to be the one that brings the most tension. You have your 5. And then you want to release it. Okay? And like I said before, all music is tension and release, tension and release. So for example, doesn't matter what key we're playing in. Let's say we're in C sharp or D flat. Your 2, of course, would be your E flat minor. All right. The 5 would be the A flat major. And of course, the 1 would be the D flat major. Okay. It works like that with any key. It doesn't matter if it's a key of B. Your first chord would be your C sharp minor. Okay. Your second chord is going to be your F sharp major. And then you're going to resolve back to B as your first chord or the 1 chord. Now, with these chord progressions, what we're looking at is taking them, and you may say to yourself, well, Chris, I've been playing this and that 2-5-1 is sounding really, really vanilla right now. Well, yeah, it's going to sound like that because we're not implying another key. Diatonically, remember that word diatonic just means you're just playing just the keys, no sharps, no flats, no accidentals. So it's all white keys in the key of C. So I'm not changing, I'm not altering anything. So that's why it sounds the way it does. It's very kind of dry. But now if I took that and I said, okay, you know what? Let me play in the key that I'm trying to get to. All right. Or give it some color. So I can take that same 2-5-1 chord progression. And mind you, some people want to argue, no, it's a 7-3-6. It's the same difference. 7-3-6, 2-5-1. Don't get caught up too much in numbers, but just take my word for it. It's all 2-5-1 chord progressions, believe me. So now we go from our 2, 5, and then 1. We can do that same chord progression again that has leading tones. We can go. See, it doesn't matter where you actually land per se, but a lot of times we're implying the key that we're in, but we ended up in the key of C. All right, so we didn't do a root position chord here. We added that B there, okay, the major 7th. But for our intents and purposes here, we can do that anywhere. So for example, if you wanted to go to F, we're not going to play, and I wouldn't play it like this. Technically, yes, if we looked at the second interval from F, it would be G. F, the second interval would be G. So if we're going to the chord, landing on the chord F major, all right, this here, 2, it still sounds like it's playing in the key of C. The reason this is because it is B here. B is not an F, so it even sounds kind of weird now that your ear is, sounds kind of off, right? Right, and this is in jazz, it's called the sharp 11. But the point being here is that this B here needs to kind of be changed. So if I was approaching F and I was using a 2-5-1, well, I would, instead of playing it in the key of C major, well, why not play it in F major? This is where I want to go. So I'll play 2, all right, 5. You see the difference? Big difference there by putting that B flat in there because I want to imply the key that I'm going to. That's what the 2-5-1 does. It pushes you forward. This is why it's called a chord progression, because you're progressing, going from one thing to another. Where this is kind of static, it's a 2-5-1 where it feels like it's compelling. Very different. Okay, same thing. We can go to A flat major. Like say we're in E flat, right? And we wanted to go to A flat major, so we can do 2, 5, 1. I did a minor 2, all right? E flat 7, you know, E flat major with a flat 7, and then the E flat suspended second, or A flat 2, I should say, not suspended, but A flat 2, right? Our B flat is here. That's 2, 5, 1. It's compelling, but this is way more compelling. So this here, this tension is keeping you up 1, okay? Now I'm gonna tell you something else. With the 2, 5, 1, a lot of times in jazz, in gospel, you move from a 2, 5, 1, but you also do the 5 and then go to the 1. So if somebody's playing and you're playing in the 1 key, right? You're, I don't know. And then you wanna go now to the new key. All right? That 5 chord can push you, especially the more tension the 5 chord has, the more it can push you to the next key, because you're implying the other key. You tell the ear, the person, the listener, well, get ready because I'm about to change keys right now, even if you don't really change keys. Because remember, in the previous example, when I showed you the 2, 5, 1, of course, for C would be D, G, and C, and F to go to F, the 4th interval of C. Technically, the 2 is G, the 5 is C, and the 4 is for C would be 1. So 2, 5, 1. But if you played it 2, 5, 1, very vanilla sounding, very, very dry, and it's not compelling. But if we implied the key by throwing in that B flat there, because it's not in the key of C major or C diatonic, it's not in that scale, but it's in the scale of F major. So why not tell the ear, hey, listen, ear, this is where I'm gonna go. This is where I am, I'm in C, but we're all going, get ready to go to F. So make the chord so compelling that the ear, the listener wants to go there. So it's 2, 5, 1. Very, very different. All right, so I hope that's helped you guys. I hope that makes sense. So when I start talking about 2, 5, 1, you guys aren't confused and, left out there in space. Well, God bless you, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to see more of this stuff. If it's helping you, leave any questions and comments in the comment section, and I promise I'll respond to you. Take care.